Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Christopher Rice, who's writing under his pseudonym C. Travis Rice about, Sapphire Dawn. And of course mine would turn sideways, you know. Technical issues right out of the gate, Chris.
And mine is annotated.
I love it. I love it. So give us a little overview about what Sapphire Dawn is about.
Well, you know, all the Sapphire Cove novels stand on their own. I think that's important because I'm a terrible series reader. I can't remember what happened in the previous book. So if I introduce something, I'm going to reintroduce it, or I'm going to do my best at least. So I've wanted to tell Donnie's story from the moment he first walked on the page in book one. He's a brash, outspoken, shameless former porn performer turned porn studio director. The challenge of giving somebody like that their romantic happily ever after is steep. But I knew it could be done. The question I always had was it a Sapphire Cove novel, or did his story need to unfold somewhere else down in San Diego where his studio is located? And he had been such a good friend to so many of the other Sapphire Cove characters that I thought, no, this is his world can accommodate this love story too. And I was really stressing out over the idea. And it was my best friend, Eric Shaw Quinn, also my podcast co-host, who basically said, oh, you just have Donnie have to plan a wedding with some fancy pants event planner at Sapphire Cove for Logan and Connor, who have been talking about getting married now for 3 books. And now it's time. He just tossed it off like it was. And I was like, oh, that actually really works, because it was opposites attract. It was very rom-com-y. Yeah. It was very forced proximity. So it is the most rom-com-y in the series. You know, it is the most, I think, banter-filled. And it's the thing that I really love about it is it's 2 men who are kind of close to my age. You know, there's a lot of romance about people in their 20s, first love, kind of Romeo and Juliet kind of stuff that ends far more happily. This was about 2 older gay men with a lot of baggage and a lot of wounds. And one of them has been badly betrayed by his ex-husband, just badly betrayed. And the other one has always been told basically he has no right to a committed relationship because of his profession. So it was really, I hate the term, it writes itself, but let's just say it really grew legs quickly.
Well, and I love that. And I do love the fact that you've given us a bunch of complex characters. Again, you've given us characters sort of all over the spectrum. But you've also, I think, a lot of ways with Richard and Donnie, I think they share a lot of similarities. I think there's a lot of, even though I think if you looked at it on paper, you would say, oh, they're not alike at all. Yet what you did is you gave us 2 characters who were so much similar, but with really different backgrounds.
Yes.
They can hold their own, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And they can check each other's BS, which is what I love about a couple. You know, they can,
They don't have to be just alike, you know?
No. How boring. You know what? I don't want someone who's just like me. I'm a lot. I'm really high maintenance. If 2 me's, no.
That's why we're friends, Chris, because I recognize. It's like, if I'm going to be the star of attraction, I can't have a second star. I need somebody back there, you know, picking up the bags and being nice about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you have a favorite character in this book that you enjoyed writing sort of more than the others? Or I always think that's a hard question. I think that's
it's Donnie. As I like to say, I don't want to be too explicit. Donnie's the only character in this series I'd bottom for. He's really, from the time, because I love his confidence. I love his swagger, and I love his confidence, and I love his complete absence of shame. I mean, he's got shame, but it's not around the fact that he's done porn all his life, all his adult life. So he's just infectious. The opportunity to be Donnie in the world and to be unconstrained by so much of what a lot of us feel constrained by is really, it was really exciting. And he says what he thinks. And those are always the most fun characters because you don't have to really restrain yourself as a writer. You can have them lob a bomb, and then have everybody else deal with the consequences of their own dishonesty being called into question.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that I really did like about Donnie so much, is the fact that he does have big brass balls, for one. But the other thing is he's sure of himself, and he isn't a malicious person. He doesn't say these things to be malicious. He really does just drop a bomb of truth, and it's like, okay, here it is, deal with it. And I like that, because we all need that friend, seriously, that, you know, sort of smacks you on the back of the head and says, what were you thinking?
Absolutely. That's it. For me, that's Eric Shaw Quinn. You know, he's the one. He's the one. Yeah.
And that's a good thing. So now I have to ask a couple of little personal things. How is your texting game?
My texting game, it's compulsive, I would say.
All
like
right.
my texting game, if I'm into somebody, I have to like not over text. I can be that guy. What you doing? What are you doing now? Are you doing something that different than what you were doing the last now?
Me? Right.
Yeah. Are you thinking of me? Are you sleeping with somebody else? Like, you know, not that that's a problem. Yeah. So it's been a while since I've gone down that road with somebody, but my texting game in other areas is pretty good. I'm a writer, so I'm very imaginative. If somebody
there you go. So it was funny, because when I got to that part, because Donnie says, you know, of all the things he'd classed up, his texting game wasn't one of those. I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you don't get somebody like Donnie and then ask him to clean up all of his act. Like his nickname is Sex Monster, and he can carry that into
whatever
a
room he needs to take it into. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Oh, I also love the fact that you give us characters that we've seen before, if you've read the novels before. And as you say, it does stand completely on its own. This isn't a retelling or the second story of. This is yet another story that stands completely on its own, and it's so much fun. But you did bring back some of my favorite characters from before. So, you know, I love Jonas, and give him my number, if you would, please.
I will give Jonas your number. Absolutely. Jonas is going to get his own story. I've always planned. That's a lie. Initially I planned 3 books. And then when I got to the 3rd book, I was like, I have more books. So it became a 5-book series in my head. So I've got one more book I want to do, and it's Jonas's story.
Good. I love Jonas. Jonas is yet another take no prisoners character who is very sure of himself, but he's also a best friend.
Right.
And I assumed by the ending I was going to get a Jonas story, which I'm jonesing for already. And I know this has just come out, and yet I'm ready. I'm already jonesing for the next one. So
love hearing that.
So are you going to go on tour? Will you be doing
this is my tour right here with you. I'm doing a tour from my living room. It's fantastic.
It's easy.
We're spending all day Zooming, and this is so different than the old days where you'd have to get on a plane at 5 in the morning to go do the morning show in Paducah, which was fun. It was fun because you'd be there with like the boys choir and the local snake wrangler. It was really, and you know, like, yeah, it was really, I saw some things on local morning shows that I can't unsee. So no, is that I'm not leaving my living room. I do a lot of traveling for conferences, which is really kind of more how romance works. I was in Paris earlier this year, which was great for Rare. I had never really done any European book events. I'll be on the Rainbow Readers Cruise in a few months from now, which is like, I've been on a cruise since I was 11 years old. See? So I do those sort of more regular things because the fact of the matter is we're losing a lot of our bookstores. You know, book tours were about doing kind of the whistle stop thing. We've got some great stores here in town, but you know, this is really, Blue Box Press is a wonderful author-centric publisher with a largely digital model, but their print books are available. Usually if you go into your favorite local bookstore and request them, they can order them for you. If you have misgivings about Amazon or digital publishing in general, and that you're more comfortable making a purchase that way, you can do it there.
And I'm sure on bookshop.org as well. So I'll put
I believe so. I believe so. And IndieBound and BAM. We put up a bunch of links over at the dinnerpartyshow.com, which is where Eric Shaw Quinn and I do our podcast, but we also have our book sales pages on that website.
Perfect. Yeah. That's good to know. I'll add it to the show notes as well. So what What other fun things do you have coming up in the Christopher Rice life?
I have to say I'm a proud workaholic. You know, like I take this attitude that if you get to do what you love doing, there's no problem in doing it compulsively. I'm not the most social person in the world. I love staying home and watching TV and reading. So there's a lot of that on the schedule. I don't have big 4th of July plans. I am going to go on the Rainbow Readers Cruise, as I said, in a few months. That's a big thing. Eric Shaw Quinn and I are putting out a new podcast every Sunday. A lot of what we do is true crime centric. We do Christopher and Eric's True Crime TV Club. But this month we took a break. We did a lot of really upsetting stories for Pride Month, ironically, but they were about, you know, Matthew Shepard and stories like that. Sure. And we got to this month and we said, we did Sapphire Cove Summer. So we did a bunch of episodes about owning your sexuality. We're going to serve up the story of Scotty Bowers, who a lot of people in the community know about. Lighter stuff than our usual fare of murders.
Lighter than true crime. That's good. Yeah. Every now and then it's good to do that. So
absolutely.
So I know that you've written in multiple genres. What has brought you to romance?
Just this desire to do it. You know, this desire that built up after experimenting with other kinds of romance years ago, attending conferences and being blown away by how fun they were. I really got it in my, and I started reading male romance, thinking I would hate it, thinking that its authors were all women who had no idea what they were talking about. I was totally wrong. I got totally swept away by what I read. I was overwhelmed by the diversity of it in terms of subgenres. The diversity in terms of race has gotten steadily better. It wasn't great at the outset. Right. But you could get a space opera, you could get a thriller, you could get a something just sunny and beachy, you could get it was like entering this gay cable TV network that I had always dreamed existed in my mind, you know. So that was really what did it. And I think the pandemic is what brought it out of me. Eventually I had the time to write Sapphire Sunset.
Yes, we all stayed home and learned to do what we were passionate about. It made our lives a lot better than that.
Absolutely.
Chris, do you have a website or social media you'd like to share?
I do. I have multiple websites. So get the pen ready. The Dinner Party Show is where Eric and I do our podcasting every week, and it's where we have our book sales pages as well. There is a dedicated website just for this series. Visit sapphirecove.com, which is designed to kind of look like a hotel website. So
love it.
You're not there by mistake. And then Christopher Rice Books has got the gamut of everything I've worked on in my career.
Perfect. Lovely. This book is, oh, where's my mind gone? Sapphire Dawn. And it's book number 4 in the Sapphire Cove series. Standalone book, though. So thank you so much for joining me, Chris. I had such a great time.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Christopher Rice, what you reading?
KJ Charles. KJ Charles is one of the best gay romance writers out there. My business partner and podcasting co-host, Eric Shaw Quinn, is mad for her. And so I'm reading The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen, which is one of her more recent books. It's usually historical romance with wonderfully sophisticated, witty men.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you for the recommendation.
Thank you.
Hang on for me just a second. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.